Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defender, watching the stars through the wide viewport. The ship moved quietly through space near Earth's moon. It was another normal patrol day in the year 2087. Human colonies on Mars and Europa were growing bigger every month. Mining ships worked in the asteroid belt, pulling valuable metals from floating rocks. Everything seemed peaceful. Then the alarm started screaming. "Captain, we have unknown contacts at the edge of the solar system," said Lieutenant Amy Foster from her station. Her voice was tight with worry. "They just appeared out of nowhere. The sensors show at least 50 ships." Jake felt his stomach drop. No human ship could travel that fast or appear without warning. He moved to the main screen where green dots showed the location of the strange ships. They were huge, much bigger than any human vessel. "Get me Admiral Lisa Carter at Luna Base," Jake ordered. "And send a message to all human ships. Tell them to be ready for anything." The main screen flickered and Admiral Carter's face appeared. She was a tough woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. Behind her, Jake could see the busy command center of Luna Base with people running everywhere. "Captain Morrison, I see them too," she said. "Every ship we have is moving to defensive positions. But Jake, look at the size of those things. Our biggest warship looks like a toy next to them." Jake nodded. The alien ships were moving closer now, and their size became more frightening with each passing minute. Some were longer than 3 football fields. Others looked like giant metal insects with weapons sticking out from every surface. On Mars Colony, teacher Amy Foster was in her classroom when the emergency broadcast began. The children looked scared as the voice from Earth explained that unknown aliens had entered their solar system. Amy tried to stay calm for the kids, but her hands were shaking. "Are the aliens going to hurt us?" asked a little girl named Jenny. "I don't know, sweetheart," Amy said softly, "but the grown-ups are going to protect us." Deep in the asteroid belt, Miner Pete Johnson was working inside a big rock when his radio crackled to life. The message was short and scary. "Unknown alien ships. All human ships to prepare for possible attack." Pete looked at his mining tools and laughed bitterly. What could he do with a rock drill against alien warships? Back on the Defender, Jake watched as the alien fleet came closer. They moved in perfect formation like they had done this many times before. When they reached the middle of the solar system, they stopped. "Captain, we're getting a transmission," said Communications Officer Carol Barnes. "It's coming from the biggest alien ship." "Put it on the main screen," Jake said. The screen filled with the image of something that looked like a cross between a man and a lizard. It had blue-green skin, yellow eyes, and sharp teeth. When it spoke, its voice was cold and proud. "I am War Prime Kethter of the Zephyrian Empire," the alien said. "We have conquered 17 star systems. Your species will surrender now or be destroyed. You have 1 hour to decide." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in silence. "Admiral, did you hear that?" Jake asked. "Every human in the solar system heard it," Carter replied. "The aliens broadcast it everywhere. They want us to be their slaves." Jake felt anger rising in his chest. Humans had fought for thousands of years to be free. They had built colonies on other worlds, created amazing technology, and reached for the stars. Now some alien lizard wanted to make them slaves. "What are your orders, Admiral?" he asked. Carter was quiet for a moment. Then she spoke with a voice like steel. "We fight. Send the message to every human ship and colony. We will not surrender. We will not become slaves. If they want Earth, they'll have to take it from our dead hands." The hour passed quickly. Human ships took positions around Earth and the Moon. They looked small and weak compared to the alien fleet, but they did not run away. When the time was up, War Prime Kethter appeared on the screens again. "You have chosen death over service, so be it." The alien ships opened fire. Jake watched in horror as beams of bright plasma cut through space. The first human ship to be hit simply disappeared in a ball of fire. Then another, and another. The alien weapons were far more powerful than anything humans had ever built. "All ships attack pattern Delta," Admiral Carter ordered over the radio. "Make every shot count." The human ships fired back with missiles and laser cannons. A few alien ships took damage, but their shields were too strong. For every alien ship that was hurt, 3 human ships were destroyed. On Luna Base, Admiral Carter watched her fleet being torn apart. But something strange was happening. The reports coming in from Earth were not about surrender. They were about people getting ready to fight. In New York, police officer Tony Hayes was passing out weapons to anyone who wanted them. "If those things want our city, they'll have to come down here and take it," he told a crowd of volunteers. In Los Angeles, engineer Carol Barnes was working with other scientists to turn mining equipment into weapons. "We built this civilization with our hands," she said. "We'll defend it the same way." The space battle was over in 2 hours. Most of the human fleet was destroyed or badly damaged. The Defender was one of the few ships that escaped, limping away with half its crew dead or wounded. But as the alien ships moved toward Earth, something unexpected happened. Instead of surrender broadcasts, they received messages of defiance. Humans all over the planet were preparing to fight. They were turning their cities into fortresses and their tools into weapons. War Prime Kethter looked at these reports with confusion. In every other conquest, the inferior species had surrendered when they saw the power of the Zephyrian fleet. But these humans seemed to be getting more dangerous, not less. "Perhaps they do not understand their situation," said his second-in-command. "Once we land troops and show them the futility of resistance, they will submit." Kethter nodded. "Begin the ground invasion. These primitives will learn their place soon enough." But as the first alien troops landed on Earth, they found something no Zephyrian had ever encountered before. They found a species that refused to accept defeat, even when defeat seemed certain. They found humans who would rather die fighting than live as slaves. The invasion had begun, but the war was far from over. 6 months had passed since the Zephyrians landed on Earth. The great cities that once sparkled with lights now lay in ruins. Alien ships patrolled the skies, and Zephyrian soldiers walked the streets with their plasma weapons ready. But beneath the surface, something was growing that the aliens did not expect. Commander Kyle Davis crouched in the dark tunnels under New York City. The subway system had become his home and his fortress. Around him, 30 humans cleaned their weapons and prepared for another night raid. They wore old clothes and carried weapons made from scraps, but their eyes burned with determination. "Tonight we hit the supply depot on 5th Street, Kyle whispered to his team. "Carol, are the explosives ready?" Carol Barnes nodded. She had been an engineer before the invasion. Now she was the best bomb maker in the resistance. "I used parts from old cars and some chemicals from the drugstore. It should take out their whole food supply." Kyle smiled grimly. 6 months ago, he had been a regular army officer with a desk job. Now he was learning to fight a war that no military school had ever taught. The aliens were stronger and had better weapons, but they were starting to make mistakes. Above ground, War Prime Kethter stood in what used to be the United Nations building. He looked out at the city through a large window. His yellow eyes were troubled. The conquest should have been finished months ago, but these humans kept fighting. "Report," he said to his aide. "The resistance destroyed another supply convoy last night," the aide said nervously. "That makes 12 this week. They also freed 50 human prisoners and killed 6 of our soldiers." Kethter's claws scraped against the metal railing. "How is this possible? We have superior weapons, superior numbers, superior technology. These humans should be begging for mercy." What the War Prime did not understand was that humans had learned to fight differently. They did not meet the aliens in big battles where the Zephyrians could use their advanced weapons. Instead, they struck fast and disappeared like ghosts. On the other side of the city, Dr. Emma Walsh worked in a hidden laboratory. She had been studying the aliens since the invasion began. What she found was both surprising and hopeful. "The Zephyrians are actually not that smart," she explained to a group of resistance leaders. "They are very good at following orders and using their technology, but they cannot think of new ideas quickly." "What do you mean?" asked Tony Hayes. The former police officer now led the resistance in Brooklyn. "Think about it," Emma said. "They have the same attack patterns every time. They patrol the same routes. They respond to our attacks the same way. They are like very advanced robots, but they cannot adapt." She pointed to drawings on the wall. "I think they evolved on a world where they were always the strongest. They never had to learn to be clever or sneaky. But humans come from a world full of dangerous animals. We learn to survive by being smarter, not stronger." This was the key that the aliens did not understand. Every human had ancestors who survived by outwitting bigger, stronger predators. Lions were faster, bears were stronger, wolves hunted in packs, but humans learned to make tools and use their brains. In space, Captain Jake Morrison was learning the same lesson. His ship, the Defender, was badly damaged but still fighting. He had gathered other surviving human ships and was attacking Zephyrian supply lines. "Captain, we have 3 alien cargo ships approaching the asteroid belt," reported Amy Foster from the communications station. "Good," Jake said. "Remember, we hit fast and run. We cannot fight their escort ships directly, but we can make them afraid to travel alone." The human ships were much smaller than the alien vessels, but they moved in ways the Zephyrians could not predict. They hid behind asteroids, used the gravity of planets to speed up, and struck where the aliens least expected. But the most important thing happening was on the planets the Zephyrians had conquered before Earth. News of the human resistance was spreading, and it was giving other enslaved species hope. On the water world of Delta Prime, the fish-like Deltans heard stories of humans who turned their cities into mazes and their tools into weapons. For the first time in centuries, some Deltans began to whisper about fighting back. On the rocky world of Korth, the insect-like Korthans learned that humans had turned their computer networks into weapons against the Zephyrians. Soon, some Korthans began to quietly sabotage alien equipment. The Zephyrians had ruled by fear for so long that they forgot something important. Fear works both ways. Now their slaves were learning to make the masters afraid. Back on Earth, the resistance was growing stronger. In the ruins of Chicago, teacher Amy Foster had started a school for children in the underground tunnels. But this was not a normal school. She taught the children how to hide, how to find food, and how to send secret messages. "Why do we have to learn this?" asked a young boy named Billy. "Because," Amy said gently, "we are teaching you to be free. The aliens think they own us, but they are wrong. We belong to ourselves, and we will never stop fighting for that." In the desert outside Las Vegas, miner Pete Johnson had built something the aliens never expected. Using his knowledge of explosives and mining equipment, he had turned an old mine into a factory for making weapons. Humans came from all over the country to get his homemade guns and bombs. "Aliens think we are primitive," Pete told his workers. "But we are the species that learned to make fire, to grow food, and to build cities. We can learn to make anything we need." The war was changing. The Zephyrians still controlled most of the planet, but they were starting to realize that controlling land was not the same as controlling people. Every day, more humans joined the resistance. Every night, more alien supplies were destroyed. War Prime Kethter received reports that made his blood run cold. The rebellion was spreading to other worlds. Species that had been slaves for hundreds of years were starting to fight back, and they were all using human tactics. "Sir," his aide said nervously, "High Command is asking why the conquest is taking so long. They expected us to finish this planet in 2 months." Kethter looked out at the burning city. Somewhere in those ruins, humans were planning their next attack. Somewhere in the tunnels, children were learning to be warriors. Somewhere in space, human ships were hunting his supply convoys. For the first time in his life, the War Prime felt something he had never experienced before. He felt doubt. And in the darkness below, the humans sensed that doubt like sharks sensing blood in the water. The underground war was just beginning. The message spread across the galaxy like wildfire. On 17 different worlds, species that had been slaves for centuries heard the same incredible news. The humans were still fighting. After 1 full year of war, Earth had not fallen. On the water world of Delta Prime, a young Deltan named Coral swam through the underwater city where her people had worked as slaves for 300 years. She carried a small device that human prisoners had taught her to make. It was a simple bomb, but it would destroy the power plant that kept the Zephyrian base running. Coral had never fought anyone before. Her people were peaceful by nature, living quietly in their ocean cities and following Zephyrian orders. But the stories of human resistance had changed something deep inside her. "The humans say that any enemy can be defeated if you are willing to pay the price," she whispered to herself as she attached the bomb to the power cables. "Today we start paying that price." The explosion lit up the dark ocean. For the first time in centuries, Zephyrian lights went out on Delta Prime. On the rocky world of Korth, the insect-like Korthans had always been good with computers, but they had used their skills only to serve their masters. Now, a Korthan named Click worked in the shadows of the alien command center, his 6 hands moving quickly over the control panels. The human prisoners had taught him something new. Instead of just following the programs the Zephyrians gave him, he could change them. He could make the alien computers work against their own creators. With a few quick movements, Click changed the navigation systems on 12 Zephyrian ships. When they tried to jump to hyperspace, they would end up in the middle of a star instead of their destination. For the humans, Click whispered in his clicking language, for all of us who refused to be slaves. Back on Earth, the resistance had grown into something the aliens never expected. In the ruins of Washington, D.C., Marine Sergeant Tony Hayes stood before a crowd of 500 people. They came from all walks of life: teachers, doctors, mechanics, students, and grandparents. All of them had one thing in common: they refused to give up. The aliens made a mistake, Tony told the crowd. They thought that killing our leaders would stop us, but we don't fight for leaders. We fight for each other. We fight for the idea that no one has the right to make us slaves. The crowd cheered, but Tony's face was grim. The aliens had captured Dr. Emma Walsh 3 days ago. Along with her, they had taken 15 other resistance leaders from different cities. The Zephyrians planned to execute them in public to break human morale. What the aliens did not understand was that humans worked differently than other species. When the Zephyrians killed the leaders of other worlds, the resistance died with them. But humans did not follow single leaders. They followed ideas, and ideas could not be killed. In space, Captain Jake Morrison received a message that made his heart sing with hope. The scattered human colonies on Mars, Europa, and the asteroid belt had not been sitting idle. They had been building something in secret. "Captain," said Amy Foster excitedly, "we just got word from the Mars shipyards. They have finished the project. 30 new ships, all designed for hit-and-run attacks, and they are using alien technology that we captured and reverse-engineered." Jake smiled for the first time in months. The alien weapons and shields that the humans had studied were now being turned against their creators. Human engineers had not just copied the technology. They had improved it, made it work in ways the original designers never imagined. "Set course for the rendezvous point," Jake ordered. "It's time to take this fight to the enemy's home system." On the Zephyrian command ship orbiting Earth, War Prime Kethter received reports that filled him with growing fear. The rebellion was spreading faster than his forces could stop it. Worlds that had been peaceful for centuries were suddenly exploding with violence. "How many ships have we lost this week?" he asked his aide. 43, sir," the aide replied nervously. "The rebels are using our own technology against us, and they are coordinating their attacks across multiple star systems." Kethter's claws dug deep scratches in his command chair. The humans had done something impossible. They had taught other species to think like predators instead of prey. But worse than that, they had given them hope. The execution was supposed to happen at noon in the ruins of Times Square. Dr. Emma Walsh and the 15 other prisoners were brought out in chains. Thousands of Zephyrian soldiers surrounded the area, their weapons ready for any rescue attempt. War Prime Kethter stood on a platform above the prisoners. He activated his translation device so all humans could hear him. "These criminals represent the foolish resistance that has cost so many lives," he announced. "Watch them die and understand that resistance is futile. Submit now and your suffering will end." But as the execution began, something unexpected happened. Instead of breaking human morale, it had the opposite effect. All across the city, resistance fighters watched their friends die and felt their anger turn into something harder and colder. Commander Kyle Davis stood in the subway tunnels beneath the square. Around him, 300 fighters waited for his signal. They could not save Emma and the others, but they could make sure their deaths had meaning. "Remember what Emma taught us," Kyle said quietly. "The aliens think like rulers. They believe that killing leaders will stop us, but we are not like them. When they kill one of us, 2 more take their place." The signal came at exactly 12:30. All across New York, all across America, all across the world, the resistance emerged from hiding at the same moment. It was the largest coordinated attack in human history. Every power plant, every communication tower, every supply depot that the aliens had built was hit simultaneously. The careful preparations of months paid off in a single devastating blow. In space, Jake Morrison's fleet struck at the same time. The new ships, built with human ingenuity and alien technology, tore through the Zephyrian supply convoys like wolves through sheep. But the most important victory was not on Earth or in space. It was in the hearts and minds of enslaved species across the galaxy. The message was clear. The humans had not broken. They had grown stronger. On Delta Prime, Coral led her people in their first successful attack on a Zephyrian military base. On Korth, Click's computer virus spread through the alien network, causing chaos on dozens of worlds. The tide had turned. The hunters had become the hunted. And across the galaxy, the Zephyrian Empire faced something it had never encountered before. A war where the enemy refused to accept defeat, no matter what the cost. War Prime Kethter looked out at the burning ruins of New York and realized a terrible truth. The humans were not just fighting for their world. They were fighting for the freedom of every enslaved species in the galaxy, and they were winning. 2 years had passed since the first alien ships appeared in Earth's sky. The Zephyrian Empire, which had ruled the galaxy for over 1,000 years, was falling apart. On 43 different worlds, rebellions burned like wildfire. The proud conquerors who had never known defeat were learning what it meant to be hunted. Lieutenant Nina Brooks crouched behind the twisted metal of a destroyed alien transport ship. Around her, the strangest army in galactic history prepared for their next attack. To her left was Coral, the young Deltan whose underwater sabotage had inspired her entire species to rebellion. To her right was Click, the Korthan computer expert whose viruses had crippled Zephyrian communications across 12 star systems. "Target is the command center 2 miles ahead," Nina whispered into her radio. "Remember, we go in fast and hard. No prisoners unless they surrender immediately." Nina had been a simple office worker before the invasion. Now she commanded a mixed species unit that had become the most feared fighting force in the galaxy. The aliens had taught her something important. When you have nothing left to lose, you become very dangerous. The attack began at dawn. Nina's team moved through the alien base like a perfect killing machine. The Deltans used their natural swimming ability to attack through the water systems. The Korthans hacked into the base computers and turned the alien defenses against their owners. And the humans did what they did best. They adapted to every situation and never stopped fighting. The Zephyrian soldiers in the base had never faced anything like this. They were trained to fight enemies who followed the same rules they did. Stand in lines, shoot at each other, and the side with better weapons wins. But these rebels fought like wild animals, using every trick and advantage they could find. In 1 hour, the base was captured. In the command center, Nina found something that made her blood run cold. Intelligence reports showing that the Zephyrians finally understood what they were really fighting. "Captain Morrison needs to see this," she said into her communicator. "They know the truth about us now." Far above the planet, Captain Jake Morrison read the captured documents on his ship. What he found there changed everything he thought he knew about the war. "Amy, look at this," he said to his communications officer. "It's a scientific report about human evolution." Amy Foster leaned over his shoulder and read the alien text that had been translated by their computers. Her face went pale as she understood what it meant. The report explained something terrible. Humans were not just another intelligent species. They were something the galaxy had never seen before. They were a species that had evolved specifically to hunt and kill things bigger and stronger than themselves. The Zephyrian scientists had studied human history and found a pattern that horrified them. Wherever humans had spread on Earth, the large predators had died out. Saber-toothed cats, giant bears, massive wolves, enormous birds of prey, all extinct. All killed by small, weak creatures who used tools and teamwork to bring down prey many times their size. "They call us persistence predators," Amy read from the report. "A species that hunts by never giving up, by following prey until it collapses from exhaustion. They say we are the most successful hunters in Earth's history. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. The aliens had finally understood what they had tried to conquer. Not just intelligent animals, but the most efficient killers their world had ever produced. Creatures who had spent millions of years learning to hunt things that should have been able to kill them easily. On the Zephyrian home world of Zephy's Prime, War Prime Kethter stood in the Emperor's throne room. Around him, the greatest military leaders of the Empire tried to find a solution to their growing problem. But for the first time in their history, they were facing an enemy they could not understand. "The humans have done something impossible," reported General Vexter. "They have taught prey species to think like predators. The Deltans are attacking our underwater bases with weapons they learned to make from human prisoners. The Korthans are using human tactics to turn our own computers against us." Emperor Zethvar, ruler of 17 star systems, looked older than his 800 years. "How many worlds have we lost?" 12 have fallen completely," Vexter replied. 20 more are in active rebellion, and the humans—" He paused, as if afraid to continue. "What about the humans?" the Emperor demanded. "They are coming here. Captain Morrison's fleet is only 3 days away from our home system, and they are not coming alone. They have ships from every species we have ever conquered." The Emperor's yellow eyes widened in fear. No enemy had ever threatened the Zephyrian home world. Their capital planet was protected by the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. But these humans did not fight like normal enemies. Back on Earth, Commander Kyle Davis stood in what used to be the Zephyrian Command Center in New York. The city was free again, but it looked like a war zone. Buildings were collapsed, streets were filled with rubble, and the sky was still dark with smoke. But the humans were rebuilding, just as they had rebuilt after every disaster in their history. "Sir, we just got word from the orbital platforms," reported Carol Barnes. "The last Zephyrian ship has left Earth's atmosphere. The planet is completely liberated." Kyle nodded, but his face was grim. "The real war is just beginning. Now we have to decide what kind of galaxy we want to live in." The question was more important than anyone realized. The humans had proven something that changed everything. They had shown that any species, no matter how weak or primitive, could defeat its oppressors if it was willing to pay the price. But they had also proven something else. They were incredibly good at killing. Their entire evolutionary history was a story of successful extinctions. Every large predator on their world had died when humans arrived. Now they were loose in a galaxy full of species that had never learned to fear anything. On his flagship approaching Zephy's Prime, Captain Jake Morrison studied the tactical reports. The Zephyrian home fleet was massive. 300 warships protected their capital world. By any logical measure, his mixed fleet of 70 ships should have no chance. But logic was a human invention, and humans had never been logical about warfare. They had learned long ago that the best way to hunt something bigger than yourself was to be smarter, more persistent, and more willing to take risks. "All ships, this is Morrison," he broadcast to his fleet. "Remember what we learned in the tunnels of Earth and the ruins of our cities. We don't have to be stronger than them. We just have to be more determined." The final battle was about to begin, but it would not decide just the fate of Earth or even the Zephyrian Empire. It would decide whether the galaxy's most successful predators would use their skills to conquer or to liberate. The universe was about to learn the difference between humans as slaves and humans as hunters, and that difference would reshape everything. The battle for Zephy's Prime lasted 18 hours. When it was over, the Zephyrian Empire that had ruled the galaxy for 1,000 years was nothing but burning wreckage floating in space. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking down at the alien home world. Around him, ships from dozens of different species celebrated their victory. Deltans, Korthans, humans, and 20 other species that had learned to fight like predators instead of prey. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the planet," reported Amy Foster. "It's War Prime Kethter. He wants to surrender." Jake nodded slowly. The battle had been brutal. The Zephyrian fleet was destroyed, but the cost had been high. 40 ships from the Liberation Fleet were gone, along with thousands of brave souls who had died to free the galaxy. "Put him on screen," Jake said. War Prime Kethter appeared on the main display. The proud alien warrior looked broken and defeated. His blue-green skin was pale, and his yellow eyes showed something Jake had never seen before. Fear mixed with respect. "Captain Morrison," Kethter said in a quiet voice, "my empire is defeated, my fleets are destroyed, I formally surrender to your coalition forces." Jake studied the alien's face. 2 years ago, this creature had demanded that humanity become slaves. Now he was begging for mercy from the same species he had tried to conquer. "What guarantees do you offer for the safety of all liberated species?" Jake asked. "We will withdraw from all conquered worlds," Kethter replied. "We will pay compensation for the damage we have caused. We will submit to whatever justice you demand." Jake was quiet for a long moment. This was the moment that would define not just the end of the war but the future of the galaxy. The humans had proven they were the most dangerous predators in known space. They could easily become the new conquerors, ruling through fear just like the Zephyrians had done. But that was not the human way. "We accept your surrender," Jake said finally. "But understand this. We are not here to replace your empire with our own. We are here to make sure that no species ever again has to live as slaves." 6 months later, Admiral Lisa Carter stood in the Great Hall of New Geneva, humanity's first colony beyond the solar system. Around her sat representatives from 47 different species. They had come together to create something that had never existed before: a galactic government based on freedom instead of conquest. The meeting was not going smoothly. Species that had been enemies for centuries were trying to work together. Some wanted revenge against their former oppressors. Others wanted to build their own empires. The debates were loud and sometimes angry. But whenever the arguments got too heated, someone would remind everyone of a simple fact. The humans were still there, still watching, still ready to fight if freedom was threatened again. "The proposal before us is simple," Carter said to the assembly. "No species has the right to conquer another. No empire can force others to become slaves. Any species that tries to build an empire through conquest will face the combined forces of the Galactic Freedom Alliance." A Zephyrian representative stood up. It was former War Prime Kethter, now just another voice in the assembly. "Admiral Carter, my people accept these terms. We have learned the cost of trying to rule others through force." Kethter looked around the room at all the species his people had once enslaved. "The humans taught us something important. Strength does not give you the right to rule, and being strong does not mean you will win against someone who refuses to give up." In the back of the room, Commander Kyle Davis listened to the speeches with mixed feelings. The war was over and freedom had won, but he knew this was just the beginning. Building peace was going to be much harder than winning the war. Later that day, Kyle walked through the streets of New Geneva with Lieutenant Nina Brooks. The city was a strange and wonderful place. Humans worked alongside Deltans in the underwater sections. Corthans maintained the computer systems. Former enemies now built something together. "Do you think it will last?" Nina asked. "This peace we've built." Kyle was quiet for a moment, watching a group of children playing in a park. Human kids ran around with young Deltans and Corthans, laughing and having fun together. They did not see enemies or different species, they just saw friends. "It will last as long as we remember what we fought for," Kyle said finally. "We didn't fight to conquer anyone, we fought so that everyone could be free." Across the galaxy, the changes were spreading. On worlds that had been slave colonies for centuries, people were learning to govern themselves. Former Zephyrian soldiers worked alongside their former prisoners to rebuild what the wars had destroyed. But the most important change was in how the galaxy thought about war itself. The human concept of total war, where an entire species could unite against a common threat, had changed everything. No species would ever again assume that having better weapons meant they would automatically win. In the deep space exploration ships that now carried the flag of the Galactic Freedom Alliance, human captains worked with crews from dozens of different worlds. They were not conquest fleets. They were missions of peace, reaching out to new species and offering friendship instead of slavery. Captain Jake Morrison, now Admiral of the Deep Space Fleet, stood on the bridge of his new ship as it approached an unexplored star system. His crew included former enemies who had become trusted friends. "Admiral, we're detecting radio signals from the third planet," reported his Corthan communications officer. It looks like we've found another intelligent species. Jake smiled. Open a channel and broadcast our standard greeting. The message that went out to the new world was simple but powerful. We are the Galactic Freedom Alliance. We come in peace. We offer friendship to those who seek it, protection to those who need it, and freedom to those who have lost it. The response came back in a language they had never heard before, but the translation was clear. Welcome, friends. We have been waiting for someone like you. As the ship moved toward the new world, Jake thought about how much had changed. 3 years ago, humanity had been a small species confined to one star system. Now they were the guardians of freedom for half the galaxy. But the most important change was not in human power or territory. It was in the knowledge that had spread to every corner of space. Any species, no matter how small or weak, had the right to be free. And if that freedom was threatened, they would not stand alone. The galaxy had learned that the universe's most dangerous predators were not always the biggest or strongest. Sometimes they were the ones who simply refused to give up. And now those predators used their skills not to conquer, but to protect. The humans had taught the galaxy a new law. Freedom was not something that could be given or taken away. It was something that every living being had the right to fight for. And in a universe full of species who now thought like predators instead of prey, that was a law that would never be broken again. The war was over. The hunt for freedom had begun.